Leo had picked out Barnaby himself at the garden center, his small hands clutching the cheerful, ceramic figure with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. "He can be our lookout," Leo had declared, his voice full of grave importance. So Barnaby took up his post by the lavender bush, his painted-on smile a permanent fixture of our curb appeal. For 2 glorious, peaceful weeks, all was right with the world. The violation notice changed everything. It wasn't just the fine, though the audacity of a $50 penalty for a $12 gnome was breathtaking. It was the language. Tacky. Detrimental. They were attacking my son's joy with the clinical precision of a corporate lawyer. I could already picture Brenda composing it, her lips pursed in righteous triumph, probably using a special HOA stamp she'd bought with association funds. That evening, I tried to explain HOA tyranny to a 7-year-old. "It means Barnaby broke a rule just by being himself," I said, my voice tight. Leo's big, brown eyes welled with tears. "But he's not hurting anyone. He's just smiling." I had no good answer for that. The sheer, unassailable logic of a child versus the arbitrary pettiness of the HOA was a mismatch of epic proportions. Moving Barnaby to the backyard felt like a surrender, a concession that Brenda's reality was the correct one. As I placed the gnome on the patio, his back now to the forbidden front lawn, it didn't feel like a solution. It felt like the first battle in a war I never signed up for, and the first crack in the serene facade of Serenity Estates. The seed of rebellion was planted, watered by my son's quiet sniffles. The gnome's exile was merely the end of the opening act. Brenda's campaign of domestic terror had just begun. The dandelion fine was next. They weren't even yellow yet, just 3 fuzzy green heads hiding in the grass that I'd missed during my weekend mowing. The notice claimed they were unapproved flora, which sent me back to the bylaws, only to discover there was no approved list of flora, just a blanket ban on weeds, a category left entirely to the board's discretion. Then came the mailbox. Paint is 3.7% less reflective. How do you even measure that? Did she come out here with a spectrophotometer in the dead of night? The absurdity was the point. It wasn't about the mailbox, the dandelions, or even the gnome. It was a message. I am watching. I have the power. Your life is subject to my approval. Each plastic-sleeved notice felt like a psychological paper cut. My morning coffee ritual was ruined, replaced by a sense of dread as I peered out the front window, scanning for the next bad news stick. Mark suggested we just pay the fines to make it stop, but that felt like feeding a gremlin after midnight. It would only make her stronger, hungrier. Leo, meanwhile, had developed a nervous habit of scanning the lawn for infractions himself. "Mom, that blade of grass is looking a little long," he'd say, only half joking. That's when the anger truly solidified. She wasn't just harassing a homeowner. She was stealing the simple, careless joy of childhood from my kid. This was no longer a nuisance. This was war. My transformation from mild-mannered homeowner to subterranean legal guerrilla operative began that night. While Mark watched TV, I was hunched over my laptop, the blue light of the 127-page PDF I'd titled, "Say in Our Earth" PDF, washing over my face. It was a slog. I learned about easements, roofing material reflectance values, and the thrilling world of non-compliant hardscaping. But buried in the legalese, I found my weapons. The rules were arbitrary, but they were also poorly written, full of loopholes a cheerful, chalk-drawn gnome could drive right through. The next morning, I presented Leo with a brand new 64-pack of sidewalk chalk. "We're bringing Barnaby back, buddy, just for a day." His confusion turned to glee as we created our masterpiece. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a declaration of petty war. I made sure it was technically perfect, fully on my property, using a non-permanent medium. When Brenda's tank-like SUV did its slow-motion drive-by, I felt a thrill of victory. She had seen it. She knew. The certified mail notice with its made-up violation code was her counterattack, but it felt desperate. She was no longer just enforcing rules. She was inventing them on the spot to target me personally. That $150 fine was the best motivation I could have asked for. It pushed me from playful resistance to focused intelligence gathering. The bylaws were one thing, but to truly win, I needed to know my enemy. My nightly walks with Gus were no longer for relaxation. They were reconnaissance missions. The hunter was about to become the hunted. My evening walks with Gus took on a new, clandestine purpose. I was no longer just a homeowner getting some air. I was a spy in my own neighborhood, a suburban secret agent armed with a phone camera and a dog who kept trying to sniff every fire hydrant. My target, 224 Primrose Path, Brenda's fortress of conformity. At first glance, it was pristine, a monument to beige perfection. But my eyes, now trained by hours of bylaw study, saw the cracks in her facade. The 6-foot fence was the most glaring violation. A solid, imposing structure that screamed, "I make the rules, so they don't apply to me." I snapped a photo, the flash off, feeling a jolt of illicit excitement. Then I saw the garbage cans, permanently parked on the side of her house in clear view of the street. Click. The satellite dish, bolted arrogantly to the front roof eave, was the cherry on top. Click. I documented it all like a forensic investigator. Date-stamped photos, cross-referenced with the specific bylaw numbers I'd memorized. 11B, 31C, 22A. This wasn't just a list of mistakes. It was a pattern of blatant hypocrisy. The woman who threatened a lien over my son's pond had her own property littered with violations. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it fueled me. This was my silver bullet. I wouldn't fire it yet, though. I would wait for the perfect moment, when her arrogance was at its peak, and then I would dismantle her entire kingdom, one hypocritical brick at a time. The news about Brenda's secret rendezvous landed with the force of a seismic shock, fundamentally altering the landscape of our conflict. This wasn't a bylaw violation. This was a nuclear option. Leo's innocent report painted a vivid, damning picture. The frantic, clandestine kissing, the description of the beardless man who was decidedly not the hulking, bearded Steve. I felt a cold wave of disgust, not at the affair itself, but at the sheer carelessness of it. She was policing our grass length while her own life was this chaotic, hidden mess. I made Leo promise once more not to tell a soul. This information was too dangerous, too volatile. I tucked it away in my mental arsenal, a weapon of last resort. I never imagined she would force my hand so quickly. When Brenda herself appeared on my porch, that final notice in her hand, her demeanor was different. It was colder, more focused. The pond violation was a transparent power grab, an escalation designed to break me. But when she had the gall to invoke the safety of the children as her justification, my vision tinged with red. The hypocrisy was so profound it stole my breath. My quiet, pointed question, "Are you sure the safety of the children is your top priority?" was a calculated risk. I saw the flicker in her eyes, the brief, terrifying realization that I knew something. She didn't know what, but the seed of doubt was planted. The war was no longer about gnomes and grass. It was personal. The community room at the clubhouse was buzzing with attention I'd never felt there before. It wasn't the usual quiet resentment. It was a low, angry hum. Brenda, perched at the head table, called the meeting to order with a brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. When my turn came, I walked to the front, my folder feeling like a shield. I bypassed her entirely, placing copies of my dossier directly into the hands of the other board members. While President Henderson issues fines for subjective infractions, I began, my voice clear and steady. She is in direct violation of 3 objective, clearly defined bylaws. I used their own projector, clicking through the photos of her fence, her garbage cans, her satellite dish. The murmurs in the room grew from a hum to a roar. I quoted the bylaw numbers, my voice cutting through the noise. The issue isn't the rules. It's the selective, hypocritical enforcement. Brenda was on her feet, her face a mask of fury and panic. This is a targeted character assassination. These are minor oversights. A $500 fine for a grandfathered pond is a minor oversight? I shot back. The crowd erupted in agreement. It was a mutiny. Seeing her losing control, I made my final move. I walked over and placed the sealed envelope in front of her. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the single, typed sentence. The color drained from her face completely. In that moment, she wasn't a powerful president. She was a woman who'd been caught, and she knew her entire carefully constructed world was about to implode. Her adjournment was a barely audible squeak, the sound of a tyrant surrendering. The committee was a start, but Brenda was still clinging to power, a wounded animal backed into a corner. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. 2 days later, I heard the shout, seeing her in my backyard. Her face contorted with a venom I'd never seen, was surreal. But seeing her hands on my son, shoving him into his beloved pond, was a primal nightmare. Time didn't slow down. It shattered. Her scream, "You little spy!" confirmed this was pure, unhinged retaliation. She wasn't just trying to scare him. She was holding his head under the shallow water, a punishment for knowing her secret. Tackling her was an instinct born of pure terror. The police were a blur of questions and flashing lights. My doorbell camera, which had captured the entire audio of her confession and the struggle, was the irrefutable evidence that sealed her fate. Her arrest was swift. The scandal exploded, a firestorm of gossip and long-suppressed rage. Steve filed for divorce immediately. The man from the Greenbelt was exposed as another board member's husband, causing a second, simultaneous resignation from the HOA. In the aftermath, our community reclaimed itself. Maria, our new president, didn't just repeal the tacky clause. She instituted a common-sense committee to review all fines. The first official act was a community-wide lawn ornament day. Now, Barnaby the gnome stands guard on our front lawn, a cheerful sentinel of victory, flanked by a pink flamingo and a smiling frog. Leo is safe. The pond is full of koi, and Serenity Estates, for the first time, actually lives up to its name.